What if the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're doing too much, but because you're mothering everything and everyone except yourself, your work, your team, your family, your vision, your next level? You hold it all. You anticipate, you stabilize, you make it work, and your own needs, they get handled later. Today's conversation is about self-mothering, not the soft version, but the leadership version. The kind that creates boundaries without guilt, power without burnout, care without self-abandonment. Because here's the truth, most high-achieving women were never taught. If you only know how to pour outward, your leadership will always cost you. And as we close out the year, I wanted to explore something deeper, the theme of motherhood, identity, and the rituals that keep us grounded, and why these practices are so essential for women who lead. This episode will change how you lead in the year ahead, forever.
Welcome to The Balanced Leader, hosted by Yan Dang, a leadership and life coach with over 20 years of corporate experience. Drawing from her journey as a former global finance leader and second-generation immigrant, Yan understands the unique challenges women face in male-dominated workplaces. Each episode offers insights on balancing masculine and feminine energies, mastering soft skills, and building emotional intelligence. Join us to transform frustration into empowerment and unlock your authentic leadership potential.
Welcome to the show. Today, we have a very special guest on The Balanced Leader. It's Dr. Gertrude Lyons. She's a transformational leadership and development coach and expert who believes something that stops most women in their tracks. Every woman is a mother, with or without children. She teaches that we mother ourselves, our careers, our dreams, and that rewriting how we mother is one of the most powerful identity shifts a woman can make. This conversation is going to move something inside of you. All right, welcome to the show, Gertrude. I am so happy to have you here. I also wanted to just share personally, I have coached with Gertrude and she has impacted my life so much. Even my births, I've had these very empowering natural births because she opened my eyes up to what's possible. And welcome to the show. Tell us more about yourself and we're going to dive into this super powerful episode. So come on in.
Oh, well, Yan, what a wonderful intro and what a blessing and honor it is to be here on your show and just have time with you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So we are going to dive in quickly because I think this is going to be something that a lot of women ask. You know, I know I've coached a lot of women. Sometimes they have kids, sometimes they don't, sometimes they want to have kids. But when you say, every woman is a mother, even without children, what do most women misunderstand about that statement at first?
Yeah, well, there's a big misunderstanding in general, but I think we're catching up to this one, Yan. And I remember way back when doing my doctorate and having you part of a seminar that I was doing as my study for my doctorate. And this was something I just dropped in there. It was a preparation for motherhood, was the work I was doing. How do we prepare ourselves for such a big, potential event in our lives? So the women who attended, no one had children at the time, right? It was at a point in their life. And when I shared with the group this concept, which I believe is true, because when the first time I heard it, I'm like, well, that just feels like one of those truths. And why have we been believing anything different from the fact that we all mother, that children is this beautiful way that we can mother in this lifetime as a woman, but it's not the only one. But when you ask, how is it that we've come to grab onto this and us all believe it and think that we're only a mother if we have children, is years and years of programming, probably thousands of years of programming that has really led us and been wired in to believe that's our purpose on earth. That's why women are here, and that our highest calling is to have children. And it is a beautiful calling, but it also is something that we actually have choice in. And that when we really look, we are natural creators. We're original creators. And our womb is a metaphor we're creating relationships, careers, the teams we lead, we're mothering everywhere in our lives. And if you choose to have children, that's one of the facets of mothering that I call motherhood that we can take part of. But for us to, and to see the women in that seminar have such a emotional reaction to that, and to see themselves and the things that they had already been doing in their lives that they were already mothering was so beautiful that I really felt like this is something that needs to be said a lot more, and a belief that really needs to get broken. So I'm so glad you brought it up, because we have this mothering creative energy, but that the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. So you mentioned that. And that's not just a tag on to this whole we all mother. It's probably one of the key features of it.
Well, I'm also curious because the way that you're talking about mothering, does it apply to men as well? Like, is it something that they do in their lives and their careers? We just don't name it that way.
We don't name it that way. And probably because it ties to the fact that we haven't really valued the mother paradigm, the mother energy. I call it mother energy, and it's a more feminine value energy, creative energy. And yes, for sure. Just like as women, we have masculine ways that we, live and lead in our lives. They're just have been in the forefront more. And this isn't one that's talked about as much and is valued as much. So yeah, we all have it, and it's all something we bring to the table.
Yeah, I actually, for myself in my leadership, mothering has been a kind of a charged word, In some ways, it's like, no, they're not. When I think about my direct reports, I would be like, I'm not their mother, because there's like this, I don't know. I think this underlying belief that I have to sacrifice for them, which says a lot about my upbringing and my own mother. But I remember I had come up with a phrase that really helped me think about the type of mother I wanted to be for my direct reports. And it is that I am sort of mother that has high standards. And my job as a leader was to create excellent professionals. And it helped me to tell them the truth about things, to give them feedback, but in a way where I didn't feel like I, was sort of going against myself, and that I had good boundaries in place. Because I think sometimes, and this is kind of this next question is this unconscious mother code that shows up in high achieving women. You feel like you have to pour into everyone. And, there's so many women leaving the workforce now, and the system isn't quite set up for women, right, to take care of themselves. So I'd just love to hear your perspective on, what do you see in high achieving women and some of the unconscious, maybe mother code that isn't really serving them?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that question, Yan, and it is definitely in the forefront of the women I work with also. And it's why I started leading retreats that are called self-mothering retreats, because I find that most of the women who come are high-achieving women that feel burnt out, that feel like, whether it's with children or their businesses or, in teams that they lead, they are giving. And we have been told, it's another one of these in my book that I share as a mother code, which is that, you're doing it right. This is what we've been told. You're a good mother, you're a good leader, you're a good caregiver in whatever way you're putting your caring energy into something, that to do it right, you have to sacrifice yourself. And that has been, again, wired in for many generations. We're only now really starting to emerge out of it. So it's new. And we're all like, yeah, I get it. Of course I need to put myself first, but I don't have a clue how. And that's what I find, that the women who come are like, I'm yearning for something that I don't know how to do for myself. And then we discover, and it becomes an adventure, not another to do, because I think that's something that happens for women a lot. It's like, my self-care or the self-mothering thing, that's just another thing I have to add to my list. And
that's, when people tell me the gratitude, it starts to own you, you have to do your gratitude. I'm like, don't do it if it doesn't work for you. It's supposed to be for you, not something that you get an A for.
100%. And what I have found is that as women just start to peel away some of these beliefs, some of the wiring that they've had that, to be valued and good, that you're sacrificing yourself, that they realize, oh, the world doesn't fall apart. Like we have so many really deep unconscious beliefs of what will happen if we ask for more support. And that's the other thing, right? You're supposed to be able to do it all yourself and do it alone. And, support is a weakness. Some of these, there's other things that tie into this self-sacrifice aspect, that's a big one. And when we can start, practicing other behaviors like giving, and that's what I'll do is I'll give assignments to ask for things, as you know, and look at what it is that you deeply desire or want and discover that this has been a lot. This is so much of what's wrapped up around this is how much do we value ourselves? How much do we feel like we deserve to put ourselves in the forefront, and move ourselves up the ladder of priorities is, kind of what we've been told, and that it's so ubiquitous in our culture that we don't even think to challenge it or understand that's something that really is going on pretty deeply and unconsciously. So we take little steps to practice and see, do any of these beliefs come true? Does everybody leave me if I ask for help? Or, when I do some, even, some self-exploration, and we can get into like, what does self-mothering look like? But I think, raising our awareness of kind of what we're up against and having a lot of compassion and grace for that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in so many women who get stuck in certain roles in their company, right? They're the glue, they're the therapist, they're the person who, maybe they're the trusted partner, but there's also, and I think it's like in that awareness when it becomes so autopilot and it feels like I can't not do this thing, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. And then it feels more depleting than it does energizing, because you feel like this is the, sort of brand you've created for yourself. And it oftentimes what I see for women is that they're so used to not putting their own agenda first or themselves first, that when you hit a certain level of leadership, you're supposed to be the authority. You're supposed to be out there saying what your sort of ideas are. And it's such a big shift, because I see women, and this was my own career, right? We rise very quickly. We're really good at anticipating what others need, what leaders need, what our team needs. But then once we get to that power position, it's like you can't play by those rules anymore because it's not sustainable. It's like you can't be that like sort of collaborator that's always like the glue when you're also, maybe really disagree with other people. And so there seems to be another level of tools that you have to learn at certain levels. But this mothering piece is so important to that. So I think this is a great segue into these rituals, right? Because you talk about rituals as like a stabilizing force. What are the rituals that most directly rewire a woman's nervous system and leadership presence? I know that's like a big one, but we'll just dive into it.
Yeah.
I know that there's not just a one thing, but I think this is what my audience is going to be excited to hear about, because and maybe there's a variety of things. And I always tell my clients, like, this is an adventure to try on, not something you get. It's something that you start feeling. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. Because as you said, there's the great thing about this is there are infinite amount of ways and rituals and things that you can do for yourself. There's no, this is the one that does it, but that can be a little overwhelming then too, right? Like
people are like, give me the answer. Tell me or give me the small steps.
Yeah, we can definitely do small steps, right? We can definitely do small steps. And
I think you've also drawn to like this bigger framework, right? Like that the more we take care of ourselves. And I think there's a study that's done by the World Health Organization, which I think is amazing. And I feel like every woman should have like that in their office or something, but it talks about how the well-being of the family system really is dictated by the woman. And if you think about family systems and you expand it to the workplace, or you expand it to maybe your family of origin or your friend group, right? Like really expanding that mothering thing. It's like, basically what it found is like the number one indicator of like the family unit working well was how well the well-being, the mental and emotional well-being of the mother, the health piece. So I'd love to just hear, what your thoughts are.
Okay, let me just comment on that, because that's so true. And that's those studies and that awareness out there. I'd love to say this. It's evidence-based that everybody benefits when you take care of yourself. I really made that point in my TEDx talk because I'm like, you really have to get that it isn't just a nice thing or something that we're just saying and to make you, to like, I don't know, give you a little like, so you can do more.
I think that's just our very like masculine patriarchal society, right? It's like, no, everybody wants an easy, like not an easy answer because it's not easy to work all night, but mentally, right? It may be less stirring, especially if you always saw your parents working hard and you're like, well, this is the key to happiness or success. I just head down and get the stuff done.
Yeah. Well, and I think you point to something that I think your audience, and I know I've come across this with a lot of women and maybe even myself, is this difference between how we value doing versus being and productivity, versus not versus, but in addition to being, right? It's like, I think that's that awareness just to know this is a big step to even start putting on the equal playing field that are being things that are going to relate more to our being. So when you talked about rituals and things that we can start adding in to value ourselves, I tend to go a little more being based than necessarily doing, but I don't know, you're still doing something.
Well, say something more about the being space. Like maybe what does that look like so we can make it a little bit more tangible for the
Because the first ones that came to my mind, Yan, were anytime I'm getting, women started in this self-mothering and being with themselves and giving themselves, the loving energy that they give other people and what they're giving out so much is giving it to themselves. So a lot of times I have them start getting acclimated, reoriented to their emotions, to how they feel and to how they feel emotionally, tuning into their bodies, listening to themselves and their intuition. And because that has, not been valued, has been actually demonized for us to vilified when we say that, I just have a feeling about this, or, being emotional in our workplace. I mean, it goes on and on, right?
It's just so interesting though, with like the biases between men and women when they're like sort of the context within, oh, they're so emotional. But you see a man come into a boardroom, pound the table or speak loudly, and they're like, this is leadership. Like, this is wow. But he's like very emotional. And that emotion actually translates to, I don't know, a commanding presence oftentimes, But for women, there are certain types of emotions that feel like they're okay at work and not okay. This like sort of stigma around it. So it keeps people kind of in this like little like box of like, how am I going to be?
And it isn't something, and I like to say this too, it isn't something that I encourage women or when they're, kind of reorienting to themselves and their emotional states. It isn't that suddenly we're being asked to like come in and show our emotions to everybody, but we've shut them down so much that we're not even sharing them with ourselves, right? So this is a process of getting in tune with yourself and starting to name what certain emotions are: fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy. What is it that I'm feeling at any given moment? And because that has data, it's valuable information for us in the decisions that we're making. We can't make decisions without being in tune with our emotions. Like if our emotional centers if we're cut off from them, we literally can't make a decision, and that's such a belief that I always want to debunk for people because we think like, oh, having emotions gets in the way of me, being rational or making decisions. No, like we get hijacked by our emotions, or they shut us down, or we run away from them, versus when we can even just start naming them within ourselves. And this can be a total inside job for a while, and something that, you're doing just with yourself and exploring for yourself before you decide if you want to share it with others, or where it might be appropriate in an actual work setting, or, in the boardroom, because it still is stigmatized, right? We still have those stereotypes. But women who do start getting, acclimated to them and seeing the power in them and seeing that our emotions are powerful, like they're a power tool for us, right? And women, we tend to be a little more accessible to them in ways, and we get that they give us information once we start tuning back into them.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's so interesting because as a mother, like you're so attuned, or that's the thought, you're very attuned to other people's emotions. And some people that I know, they call themselves an empath and they have strong feelings that they notice in themselves about other people. But I also notice like there's a difference between sensing other people's emotions, reading other people's emotions versus your own. Like sometimes you can get like absorb them, or sometimes you can get sort of, I guess, enmeshed with them where you're starting to have feelings for other people, but you're really unclear about, how you feel about it. Cause maybe you've not ever asked yourself, how do you feel about it?
No, that's such an important distinction, yeah, because we want to know what we're feeling first. And that's like the first indication. What you're saying is how much I think also as women in workplaces and with our children, we put ourselves and are looking outside of ourselves for how we're supposed to do things, to how we're supposed to feel. And our responses are overly attached to how everybody is responding around us, or the feelings, like you said, the feelings that the people close to us, or our children, or the people we work with or for, are having. But when we can tune into ourselves first, it's an important boundary, is what I'm trying to get at.
And I think that's probably where a lot of women get stuck with those boundaries. Because sometimes when you feel like you're doing emotional work or you're being emotional with other people, that you're really in touch with your own feelings. But actually, it could be, there could be like you're actually more in touch with other people's feelings because that's where your awareness is. And there's actually a disconnect to yourself.
That's a journey that I think is a really, just to name as part of a self-mothering journey is, we came to be that way for a reason, right? Like there's these deeper explorations depending on how deep we want to go and how we got wired that way. How is it that I got wired to be so sensitive to the environment around me? Well, usually it's because I needed it as a child. I needed to have that, call it a defense mechanism in that realm. It protected me. I had to know, I had to have supersonic radar to keep myself safe. And we don't even realize how strongly we've adapted behaviors like that at times. And then that's how we operate in the world. And meanwhile, we've left ourselves behind, right? Like
So we're so attuned
out there that it's like, oh, and it doesn't matter what I think, just so either everyone else is happy, or I can keep everybody calm because, it's not safe to let anybody's emotions get too strong. It's, these are like really beautiful, deep, call them mother wounds, call them, wounds of some sort that I think is part of the beautiful journey of this self-mothering. And, again, not something you have to do, but it's so informative. And when we want to start, reclaiming ourselves and putting ourselves first, those kinds of understandings, they give us a roadmap, or, they give us data that we need that makes it feel like, oh, okay, great. There's a reason that's how I respond so reflexively, or why it's so hard for me to put myself first, when we can just, kind of look back and look at what got wired in our upbringings, look at how we operated in our family system that we will then create. We can do our best to be as conscious about it, but our systems are going to gravitate what it's comfortable with and what it knows, because it wants to keep us safe. But I think it's a superpower to understand, like, oh, I can actually understand this. And then I have more choice. And then I have more choices in situations on how I want to respond, or where I want to put a boundary, or where I may need to do something differently than I'm used to doing it, and see what happens. Like you said, be curious, experiment, understand and break some of these longstanding beliefs.
Hey, podcast listeners, I wanted to pause here and tell you about something powerful I'm offering that's already helping women move from surviving leadership to commanding it. If you've ever found yourself over-explaining, second-guessing, or working harder than feels sustainable just to get the influence you deserve, you're not alone. And it's not because you lack ability or talent. And that's exactly why I created Command, a 6-month leadership accelerator and mastermind for women who are ready to show up with clarity, composure, and unapologetic authority. In Command, we move beyond theory and into weekly high-impact coaching, real-world strategy, and a community of women who are leading, rising, and opening doors for one another. You'll learn how to regulate your nervous system under pressure, communicate with precision, build strategic relationships, and design your next big opportunity, all without burning out. If you're interested in joining or want to learn more, I'd love to connect with you. You can schedule a complimentary 30-minute consult call with me at the link in the show notes. Let's explore whether Command is the right next step for your leadership journey. What I'm hearing a lot of is just like this connection with yourself. And I oftentimes tell my clients like, well, how would you do it if it was a little child, right? Like, how would you talk to this little child? And it's interesting what comes up, right? Because it's like when it's about them, they're like, it's so much harder, right? But when it's like, if your friend came with you, like just asking those types of questions help to, ground us and to create that relationship. So as you talk to people about really discovering these emotions, are there certain rituals that you have or that you have people notice or, what comes up for you around that?
Yeah, a couple things that come to mind ritual wise. Yeah. And one is like super simple that I adopted. I don't know, I've been doing this probably more than 5 years now, which is being aware of kind of what the emotional state was when I was waking up in the morning. And I realized like it's usually fear, right? And maybe that's why I was hitting the snooze alarm so much or why I just felt like, but my stress levels I could sense and tune in were pretty high. So what could I do, just easy, because I didn't want to do something I had to get up an hour earlier, to get myself in tune, which I'm totally in favor of, for people, but just we're looking simple here. And just to see how simple it can be, which is when you look at, and I've studied things about our nervous system and calming our vagal nervous system and our wiring in that way, there's a lot of simple things that we can do. And I'll give a couple of them, but the one I do, I'll say first. The one I do is, so smiling sends really good signals to your brain. And, it does more than just like think that like we're happy. It doesn't have to. It just, our body really responds to it and it automatically soothes us. So I started this ritual where if I wake up, then I will smile. So it was my first noticing in the morning of waking of any sort. It didn't even have to be that I was going to get out of bed yet, but just I'm aware that I'm awake and smile. And yeah, it's so funny because it felt so awkward. Like I felt like my face was doing something really weird. And
what's your husband like? What's going on?
That's so funny. I don't think he ever noticed. But just it has really, you do something like that over time, and the way it has, calmed my nervous system. I can easily get out of bed now. It doesn't. I don't start my day in such a high level fear state, and it makes a difference. You can do other things like hum when you first wake up or when you're kind of up and getting things going. It doesn't have to be that I set aside an hour to meditate and work out. And those things are really good. And anytime we can do something, more lengthy, but just little things like that, like singing, humming, just touching yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror. And like you said earlier, like a little girl, hello, good morning, and saying your name. Good morning, Yan. Good morning, Gertrude. You feel a little dorky and silly when you first do it, but then you realize it feels really good.
Well, it's funny because, as a mother, right, when my daughter comes in, sometimes I'm like, oh, go change out of your pull-up. But oftentimes I'm like, oh, like, how was your sleep? Like, give me a hug. And there's just a natural sense of that mothering. But I love this. Like, it's so simple. Connect with yourself in the morning. And I do think that there's something about the morning, even when I've done like hypnotherapy, like hypnobirthing type stuff. Everybody's always like, listen to it first thing in the morning, right? Like this is where you're kind of going out of that sleep stage where I do believe in that sleep stage, you're processing a lot of emotions, you're making sense of things. And as you wake up, there's just like this moments of where, conscious, unconscious kind of merges together. And I love this ritual because it's something every busy woman can do if she sets the intention to do it. of just noticing, wow, how do I feel as I'm waking up? It's so interesting with the smile piece because I've been thinking about this a lot because there's a lot of women who get the feedback at work to smile more, right? And they get really charged up about it because they're like, what if I'm not meant to smile? So it's interesting because I think there's a context in here that's really important. I think there's one context where if you know yourself deeply and you know the message that you're trying to give, you say, hey, I don't want to smile in that moment. It wasn't a moment to smile. But I think there's a broader context where women are so on edge. I do believe sometimes men say smile more because they want them to relax and have more fun and be lighter, which isn't bad, right? I think sometimes you could switch it around where they're like, you want me to be like this happy, bubbly woman. And it's not always that way. But I think this is like the emotions, right? Get you clearer on what that is, right? It's not just all or nothing, because I do think and I, work with so many women, they always ask me, what can I do to be more present? And I said, relax, have fun. It seems so simple, but when you are in that state, you're more open to things and you're more present and people are naturally drawn to you. You're more magnetic, but you're more connected to yourself. But if we're just full with, oh my gosh, got to do this, got to do that, right? It's like I was telling somebody recently, like overwhelm is a killer of presence. Feeling like you have no time kills your presence. Like these are the things that actually kill your presence. And what does every powerful executive woman want to be? More executive presence, more gravitas, more commanding presence. You can't do it if you can't command yourself or connect to yourself or attune to yourself and create space for yourself. And men are actually very good at doing that, laser focused. And it doesn't seem like, they are taking care, but they are. They're like, this is the most important thing. And oftentimes it has to do with them, So I love it. Any other thoughts for the audience here? Because this is like such an easy ritual, one ritual that you can try that really can support you to get more attuned to yourself and to mother yourself.
Yeah. Those simple ones. Yeah. And just thinking of ritual, like I do other things too. I like lighting candles in the morning and acknowledging the 4 elements. You can take these rituals then into putting a spiritual context to your day. And, I just want to name all that. All of them are valuable, right? Whatever's going to set the tone for you, get you connected to yourself, more present. And then, what can we do through the day? And I'm going to put these in the ritual category too, even though it's, it may not sound like the kind of ritual, but maybe there's things like you have a ritual of, getting your coffee or tea at certain times of the day, right? Something that you can attach this ritual that I'm going to share with another ritual that you're already doing that you may not even think is a ritual, right? But they are. We're doing rituals all the time. Our habits are rituals, right? We can layer things onto things that we're already doing. Like, our Starbucks order is a ritual, right? There's things that we put into our lives because I think as humans, we crave ritual. That's been in our DNA forever. Like ritual is something that we really attune to. We just want to make them as conscious and healthy and things that bring us more presence and give us energy versus take them away. So that being said, one that you can add to any of something that you're already doing is, when I go, the times I go get my tea or coffee, I'm going to think about an emotion that I've had, sometime in the last hour or in the morning or something. Where did I feel one of the emotions, fear, hurt, anger, sadness, joy, and just name it for myself. Just start acclimating myself toward this relationship, this flow with emotions, this awareness, this acknowledgement, and start tracking them. Just start saying them to yourself, feeling it, or what am I feeling right this moment, as I give myself, and it's different than, I'm tired, that's why I'm getting coffee. You can add to that, yes, I might be tired, but what else happened in the last few hours that I might be hurt about, or I might be sad or joyful about? And I think when we can start seeing that this is a muscle that we can flex, and once we have more connection with those emotions, we're going to tune into ourselves, we might feel those in our body in some way, look for the signals that we're getting. And to me, it's like, a little like love note to ourselves to give us that awareness and to see ourselves and that our emotions matter and to value them in a way. This is the being that we're talking about versus the doing, where we think like, I don't have time for that emotion. It's like, well, we don't have time not to because it's that valuable. It's that powerful for us.
That's great. Because I think we are as adults, right? So cognitive, like we are so in our heads often. But if you think about babies, right, they're just communicating with everything and they're so alive in their bodies.
Well, and the truth is, Yan, we are emotional beings that think. Like that is our makeup. Jill Bolte Taylor's work on whole brain living, a neuroscientist from Harvard. It's like we have it so backwards. And I especially think that's what gets, in the way of women feeling themselves or feeling more authentic or, feeling home in themselves is that we've been wired to think like that thinking is first and foremost and feeling, yeah, that's like this extra nice thing that, when or if you have time, you might have them or they're a distraction, whatever. No, this is a physiological, even spiritual part of us that once we start owning it and claiming it, it's fun, it's healthy, it's cleansing, it gives us, there's so many benefits to it and we don't realize how dragged down we are, energized, when you work with women and they're so burnt out. And some of that burnout, yes, we've been working too much or, putting our energy out, but we also haven't been giving our systems any release, of these emotions. So they're all like piling up. And sometimes people are like, wow, I can't believe how much more energy I have once I've just start feeling again.
Yeah. And then allowing those emotions to come out, to not feel like I think that's oftentimes what people do. They end up, suppressing it, thinking that they're crazy, judging themselves. Oftentimes my clients are crying. They're like, I can't stop crying. I'm like, well, you're doing really great work. And you've been to trainings with me where I'm like, I think at one of my trainings with you, you're like, I just hope you are a big puddle and you're just getting like so loved up by people. And I'm like, I hate that. But it was what I needed. It was really, it is all of those things that you said, and it's super powerful. It's so powerful to actually embody, the emotions in your body, to feel grounded in them. And I think this is the very beginning. These emotions are the very beginning of what is possible when you allow yourself to feel yourself and to be in your body and to know that power is defined in many different ways. And I think this is, a very super powerful way of doing it. And that this will allow, mothering and people who want to be mothers and people who are mothering to sustain themselves. So thank you so much for all of your wisdom, for sharing all of your insights and all of the knowledge that you've gained and have learned yourself. Tell people where they can find you, about your book. I know you recently did a TED talk too. So tell people in the audience, about you and where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Yeah. And as you know, so you can find everything and anything about me on my website, www.drgertrudelyons.com, DRGERTRUDELYONS.com. And in there, you'll find out about my book that just was released this year, Rewrite the Mother Code: From Sacrifice to Stardust, A Cosmic Approach to Motherhood. And my TEDx talk it was a big year. That was also this year, called Rewrite the Mother Code. So I think it was recently, when you search on TEDx YouTube, it was the third one that pops up. So it's gotten over 150,000 views. So I'm pretty happy about how that's going. And I also have a podcast called Rewrite the Mother Code. And then, you can work with me in coaching. I lead self-mothering retreats in Mexico and Ireland. I work one-on-one with people, and, just anywhere and everywhere we can really do this such important work for us as women and women leaders, because this is, how we're going to lead in the world is, I believe, getting in touch with ourselves in this way and honoring this mother energy. So super grateful to share all of this with you, Yan, and always being with you is a delight.
Well, thank you so much. We will link those things in the show notes too, for people listening to this and wanting to go through and, get to know you better. As we enter in, I guess we're really in the holiday season. Is there anything that, are sharing with your audience to help themselves with at this ritual time, or this like slowing down piece?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? I've been seeing a lot on like social media. It's winter. This is the time we're supposed to be, kind of tuning into ourselves and maybe hibernating or, rest and relax. But if you're someone who celebrates holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, Kwanzaa, any of them, there's a lot of stress and pressure. And I think this is particularly one for women where we feel like we're giving a lot in the year, but this time we're supposed to do it all and do it all. And I think something that I've been sharing, kind of consistently do is really tune into like, what is it that you want? What is it that you want and desire, in this time? So that's number one. And number two, asking for help, right? Asking, I don't know, it was for me, and this was something I've worked on and still do around the holidays, is I don't have to do it all myself. And sometimes that's like, oh, I don't feel comfortable asking, or you don't feel like anybody's going to do it as well as you. No one can trim the tree as well as you, or, do some aspect of it. But where can I kind of let some of that let go and let down and find some space and time, for yourself in this season? Because it's really a beautiful time, in this time of the darkest time of the year that we've been taught to kind of fear and, geez, I can't wait for, it to get light again. This is a very feminine time. This is a time, the dark is feminine, the mystery. It's a way for us to, go in and go inside. So you can explore some of that in this time also.
Oh, I love that, because I think people, I don't know, often, or maybe even myself, associate the feminine with light, like birth and things like that. But I also, right, that darkness and being able to, go inward and to explore and I think women are naturally pretty curious if they have space and time if they create their space to do that. So I love that.
Yeah, well, and the womb is the dark place, Yan. That's where creation happens, in the darkness, and when you look at the yin yang symbol, the masculine side, or the masculine energy, is the white side, and the feminine is the dark side. We have a lot of misconceptions about the dark. That's another podcast.
Yeah, I know. We could go on and on. So thank you so much for being here. But also, for the audience here too, that these holiday seasons is really a way to be with yourself and to nourish yourself. And to what Gertrude was saying, ask yourself, what do you truly desire? All right, as we close this year, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to become someone new to lead differently next year. You need to relate to yourself differently. Self-mothering is not about doing less. It's about leading from a place where your nervous system is supported, your boundaries are respected, and your power is no longer fueled by self-abandonment. The most grounded women are the ones who can hold more, not because they override themselves, but because they protect themselves first. So as you step into what's next, I invite you to ask, where am I still mothering everyone else before myself? And what would shift if I become the safest place I know? Because the way you care for yourself becomes the ceiling or the foundation of how you lead. All right, have a beautiful week ahead, and we will connect again soon. Take good care.
Thank you for being a part of the Balanced Leader community. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and actionable. For more resources and to connect with Jan, visit us at aspire-coaching.co. Until next time, keep leading with confidence and purpose.
Hey, before you go, if what you heard today resonated and you're ready to step into greater levels of presence, influence, and strategic confidence, remember, I'd love to talk to you about my signature program, Command, an accelerator and mastermind for women who lead. Visit the link in the show notes to book your free 30-minute consultation call with me and learn more about how Command can help you lead with clarity, power, and purpose. Enrollment is open now for Command, and it closes January 5th. We kick off with our very first call on January 6, 2026. Let's build your next chapter of leadership together.